If you're designing analog or mixed signal ICs, chances are you've outsourced your design for tests, maybe for years. It's just what's done, right? But what if I told you that bringing DFT in-house might be a smarter move? Welcome to EDA Expert. I'm Pete Davey from EDA Solutions, and today we're challenging the status quo. We'll be talking about why design teams default to outsourcing DFT and what an in-house strategy could look like for small to mid-sized companies. We'll explore the tools that you'd need, the skills that matter, and how taking control of your test strategy could lead to better quality, lower costs, and more flexibility. Now, whether you're curious, skeptical, or ready to make a change, this conversation is for you. Today's expert is Lee Harrison, Director of Product Marketing in the Tessent Business Unit of Siemens EDA. Lee, welcome.
Thanks, Pete. It's great to be here.
So how does it feel to be introduced as an expert?
Well, yeah, that worries me a little bit, but I think I've been around long enough to earn that badge.
I think so. I think it's quite an accurate adjective for you. After all, you've been dedicated to the discipline of design for tests with Siemens for over 20 years, I think. And
Yep.
Before that, you were a design engineer with 3Com GC.
That's right. Yeah. So
I think, well, we're in good hands. So without further ado, let's get started. And I'd like to start by asking you, why do you think so many analog and mixed signal design teams default to outsourcing DFT?
yeah. So that's a good question, and I think from what we see is so many of the analog mixed signal design houses out there. There's their perceived value of their product is in the analog capability that they're providing. So really, when you look at where their focus is, all of their engineering resource is directed at kind of this part of the design. And even though you have a large analog mixed signal device, you'll find that there is some digital content in there. The digital is important, but from a general perspective, the digital component is seen as a kind of a must-have. And from a DFT perspective, most companies out there will do their DFT through a simple turnkey solution. So outsourcing makes some degree of sense.
So do you think it's always the best option, or is it more of a habit that's really gone unchallenged?
Yeah. So I think, I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head there. I think it's one of these things where everything is evolving. And I think it's a situation where a lot of these questions, they really go unchallenged. So, and what we see is that typically the digital content in these analog mixed signal design kind of quietly grows in the background. So what may start off as just being a small piece of digital control logic kind of grows and grows and grows and adds more significance to the overall product. And in a lot of cases, starts to really build and become a differentiator in the product as much as the analog component. So all of a sudden, without realizing, the digital content becomes just as important as the analog part. So then you've got to really ask the question, will a simple outsourced turnkey solution for DFT really differentiate you in the market? And that's also before we start to talk about the inclusion for DFT for analog, which will really change the game and make DFT a comprehensive solution for the whole design, not just the digital.
Do you mind if I just rewind a little bit? You talked a little bit about DFT differentiating you in the market. Can you just say a few more words about what you were meaning there?
There is an element that says, okay, digital DFT is just a turnkey solution. It's kind of a necessity, but actually there's certain things we can do in the digital domain that can start to differentiate your product against your competitor's product. And that could be test quality, test cost. It could be additional features. So if you're looking at the automotive market, it could be functional safety capabilities. It could be security capabilities. So there's a number of areas where by tuning the DFT solution, you can add these differentiating elements, which all of a sudden, when put up against a competitor's solution, would make your product the product of choice.
Moving on, for those small, mid-sized design teams, what would an in-house DFT strategy actually look like in practice?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's not only customers' designs that are evolving. EDA tools are also rapidly changing, and what we're seeing is the productivity gains, the ease of use, are all kind of getting better, and a lot of this can be put down to the introduction of AI. This really means is that um, the whole implementation of DFT is becoming generally easier because of all of these extra kind of elements that help you along the way. So it also means that you don't have to have a dedicated subject matter expert to pick up the tools. And DFT could be allocated to someone in the design team who maybe has other tasks within the project. So DFT could be their kind of side hustle to a certain extent. And like I say, with all of the help functions that we're putting into the tools, it means they don't have to be a dedicated expert to be able to pick it up and kind of run with it. And the big advantage of that is if the function of DFT becomes internal to your company, it means the engineers with the real knowledge on the design are involved in building the DFT solution rather than when you would put it out to an external company, they very much treat it as a black box. So you've got all of the inside information on the design that could help you build a more competitive, more optimized DFT solution.
What's the difference here? Isn't approaching the problem as a black box good in that whoever has to test this, the spec says, well, the device has got to do what's spec'd in the interface. And so as a black box, that's perhaps the way to do it.
Um, there is an element of that, but remember here we're building an architecture. So if you look at it from a perspective of black box approach, you're effectively just taking the design and you're kind of building on the outside of that design. You're not really leveraging any of the advantages of the internal components of the design, the internal structure of the design. Whereas if you've got that intimate design knowledge, you can leverage that to really enhance your DFT architecture. So you're not taking shortcuts in quality by saying, okay, the design team are involved in the DFT. You're actually basically leveraging all of the design knowledge that you have to make your DFT solution even better. So by treating it as a black box, it's kind of a blunt hammer approach in terms of, yeah, I know what I need to do. I don't really know what's inside it, so I'll just add a ton of stuff to it to make it work. Whereas if you've got all that detailed design knowledge, you can really finesse the architecture and really build a neat solution.
So it sounds like you're getting to the nub of it and saying you test exactly what you want to test to do the spec and to get the most out of the test of the device,
Mhm.
both in time-wise and functionality.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just little things like if you understand the various power controls. So if you have different modes within the design with different power controls, you can leverage that to help optimize your test. But someone taking the whole thing as a black box just says, maybe, okay, just make all of the logic active and we'll just test it all at the same time. And we don't know what's happening from a power perspective because they're not really educated fully on the application. So they take a bit more of a brute force approach. That's not to say that when you do take the route of outsourcing the DFT, um, that there isn't that dialogue. There is obviously some dialogue between the design house and the DFT contractors to try and share some of that information, but it's never going to be to the same level as involving the, the actual design engineers from scratch.
Got it. Got it. So If you move forward, then what are the key tools and capabilities that a team would need to start handling DFT internally?
So I think within Siemens Tessent division, what we try and do is we've got a whole portfolio of different test tools, but we work on a common platform. So we have a common shell which you can use to drive all of the tools, implement all of the DFT structures, um, and that gives you an underlying core architecture that gets built on throughout the process. So whether you're just inserting logic test, memory test, if you're including analog, which is something coming in the future, everything's based around this common architecture. It's all leveraged from a common platform, and what we've done is we've taken the liberty to build that all on top of industry standards. So we've got IEEE 1149.1, we've got IEEE 1687, we've got IEEE 1838. So it all very much becomes plug and play. And what it means is that with having everything built on those industry standards, if you take an IP from an external third-party IP vendor, chances are that IP is being constructed with those standards in mind. So again, it's to a certain extent it's plug and play. So we're trying to make things literally as easy as possible for everybody to pull all these things together. And what that means is that if you're picking up DFT for one product and it needs logic test, you're using the common platform, everything's familiar to you. If the next project you want to add memory test, you're not having to relearn everything because it's all covered under the same single common platform.
Okay, so I got from that. I caught at the beginning you talked about Tessent. Tessent is the platform, and then there's individual products handling different functional aspects of test. What are the is it two or three key ones that you tend to see are the familiar starting blocks for
Yeah.
the sort of analog mixed signal design companies who are fairly small?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like I say, if we go back and say, okay, you've got an analog mixed signal design, it's got a digital element to it. So the first place somebody would come along and start is, I want to do basic logic scan testing. So you need a tool that will go and insert the scan chains. So basically hooking up all of the flip-flops in the design into chains so that we can apply structural test patterns. And then we have ATPG, so that's our test compress product that goes off and generates the test patterns. So at a very basic level, they're the two key technologies. And I mentioned the fact that we build everything on these industry standards. What I want to make sure is people don't hear that and think, "Oh, that sounds really complex because I have to understand all these standards." Not at all. The um, the technologies and the tools are built to leverage those standards. But if you use the tools out the box, you're not even aware that the various DFT structures are built on those standards and they're using those standards at all. So you can use the tools blindly out the box, and you're not even aware of the fact that all of the content that you're adding to your design is based on those industry standards. And we do hear that occasionally. A customer will say to us, "Oh, yeah, I'm struggling because I don't want to go down the route of this learning this particular standard." You say, "Okay, well, you've been using our tools for the last 3 years, and so all of your designs are meeting these standards already. So you're just doing it without realizing."
So that's very helpful. That was actually going to be my next question about the complexity in multiple functions and multiple standards, and you've addressed that. But what about the actual learning curve for teams? They've never done DFT before, as they've outsourced it. What kind of support or training is typically needed to get them going? I think you've addressed the issue saying, well, some of the standards, it's kind of built in, so you're going to be working off best practices from the get-go without having to be intimately familiar with it. But what about the other support or training which is they can access?
Yeah, I mean that's getting better than ever, because we have a range of different kind of learning resources available to customers. A lot of it is now kind of online, and as AI becomes a critical part of the overall EDA process, and actually we announced at DAC this year, so back in June, we announced a broader Siemens EDA AI initiative, which really brings together all of the Siemens AI kind of core capabilities and applies them across all of the EDA tools. So instead of having to kind of wade through thousands of pages of documentation, there's now AI helpers out there that will kind of serve up information. And it's the neat thing about that, it's not just a case of it's going to point you to a chapter in the document. Of course, it will do that. It will provide all of the source information, but it can also build you example test cases and really help point you in the right direction. So there's a wealth of learning material out there. And when I talk to our support engineers, they're now telling us that, well, um, they're extensively using the AI capabilities in house, to help with their own jobs. It's proving to be really, really popular.
It is phenomenal what it can do for you in terms of making you more productive. Let me just change tracks a little bit now and say, what are some of the biggest benefits about bringing DFT in house, beyond cost savings?
I think I'd say the key benefit, and I touched on this earlier, is the ability to be able to tailor your DFT solution around your design, because you have that internal design knowledge in house, and it allows you to really differentiate your product in the market. So, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of your actual product will have a physical function, but it might also have to tick a number of boxes, um, to align with other products in the market, and having that flexibility and that level of control internally, kind of really gives you the scope to be able to do that. And the direction we're heading with DFT, or the direction we've been heading for a long time with DFT, is it was originally seen as more of a back end process. We're pulling all of the DFT kind of exploration analysis, and even in IP insertion into the front end RTL design. So DFT is really a consideration now when you're putting together your functional architecture, your initial design, and what that really does is it helps with, I say, the streamlining the downstream processes. Because if you've got everything in RTL, you're verifying it in RTL. So by the time you get to synthesis and place and route, your DFT architecture is mature. So you're not adding the DFT architecture in between synthesis and place and route, and then run into a bunch of problems. Your DFT is all kind of squared away, kind of really, really early on up front. So, and you can only really do that with a very close working relationship with the actual design engineers. So that brings all of those benefits.
Lee, could you share an example of a company perhaps that you've worked with or had experience of with that made that shift to in-house DFT? And were there any particular learnings from that experience that you picked up?
Yeah. So I mean, we see this quite a lot, and actually, you'd be surprised. It's not just small companies that make this move. Um, I could list a number of large companies that have gone from embarking on the decision to all of a sudden build their own silicon, and end up having to outsource the whole back end, to very quickly putting together a whole in-house DFT back end team to bring the cost savings, to bring the optimizations, and to bring that level of control. Um, and I mean, one example going back a number of years now is I worked with um, a company that were building small wireless type devices, and they brought their DFT process in house, and we helped them optimize their DFT architecture. And there was a little bit of kind of skepticism as to, is this something we really want to be doing? It just does it really make sense? But actually, through that optimization, we were able to show that we could reduce their test cost by on a device level by just a a few cents per device, which again there was some skepticism about. But then actually, the management team did the maths and they worked out that, okay, if we, based on our volume, if we get that saving on the digital side per device, that very quickly adds up to $1 million saving. So yeah, let's do it. Let's roll it out and get it done. So all of these small savings really start to add up. So if you can save a few cents here and a few cents there, and you can improve the quality a little bit, they all kind of stack up, and they all really they really start to enhance your product and your productivity.
I guess once you get those volumes of chips and those cents adding up here and there, it just adds to your bottom line, and that can
Yeah.
make a
Oh,
huge
absolutely.
difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, what about, how does Siemens EDA support customers who want to explore or implement in-house DFT, especially those starting from scratch? I know you probably mentioned one or two things in the past
Mhm.
5 or 10 minutes, but anything else you'd like to say to that?
Yeah. So I mean, as a typical starting point, when customers start to look at, well, part of the driving, another driver for them bringing DFT in house is they probably find that they have a number of gaps or a number of shortcomings in the solution that's been provided by the outsource company. And that's by no fault of the outsource company. They've implemented DFT, but it's not as finely tuned as it could potentially be. So they will want to address those gaps and they want to address those shortcomings. So that's kind of most likely the starting point. So what we typically do is then, through support, we can walk them through how to address those gaps and those shortcomings. And quite often, I mean, we have a process where we will do an architecture review with the customer to make sure that they've covered everything, they've thought of everything, they're heading in the right direction. Because the one thing we don't want customers to do is kind of go off and head into the weeds. We want them to kind of stay on the right track. So we do a lot of kind of design reviews with customers just to make sure that we're not in the business of dictating to customers what they should do and what they can't do, but we want to make sure that they are making the best use of the technology they have available to them.
Absolutely. Uh, Are there any do you have any examples of common pitfalls or misconceptions that teams should watch out when they're considering this sort of transition?
Yes, the pitfalls is, it can be easy sometimes to kind of disappear off into the weeds and maybe make a couple of wrong architectural decisions, which is why it's really important to kind of do these early design reviews and architecture reviews. And I think on top of everything that we've got in terms of documentation and AI agents to help you to support you, there's a whole catalog of videos available on YouTube detailing all the specific kind of aspects of how to work various elements of the DFT implementation. So if AI is not your thing, YouTube is a grand source of resource to go and kind of check out people talking about how to do kind of specific tasks in the DFT domain.
If we've got someone watching this and they begin to think, actually, I'm going to just step back a bit and actually maybe there's something here that we could be doing ourselves in this company. what's the first step that they should take tomorrow?
Yeah. So what I would recommend is reach out to your local sales team. Have that early discussion. Talk through kind of what you have in mind. Maybe do an early architecture review. Share your requirements, and then based on those two key elements, um, it can be very quick to pull together a recommended route to success. Because once we know what the end goals are and your kind of key architecture elements are, then you can start to put together a recommended flow. And even if you've got, I mean, a lot of these designs will have a significant analog content um, that you may want to, well, today may be tested through kind of spec-based testing. Um, what I would also say is, like I say, kind of watch this space, because analog test is something that's going to potentially change significantly over the very near future. So again, if you're in the analog domain and you're thinking about test, kind of reach out to your local sales team, and we can have the discussion around analog tests as well. But like I say, by getting in and talking to the sales teams early, we get visibility of what you're planning, what your architecture is, what your requirements are, and certainly able to give you a lot of guidance on what direction to head in.
I'm duty bound to add a comment about our sales team. Of course, the EDA Solutions sales team are very experienced and they're dealing with lots of customers, all deal with different sorts of problems. So it is a great idea to talk to them, and they can call upon their experience to know which avenue to go down. And we work, of course, very closely with Lee and the broader team at Siemens EDA to make sure we get the best out of the technology. Now, that was all fantastic, and I really appreciate all your insights there, Lee. I've got one more question, but it's got nothing to do with IC test. It's rather about you. So you mentioned, just as we're preparing for this, that you're on business travel in Japan. I'm guessing that you do quite a lot of business travel out of your home country. Are there any particular countries or that you can say, I really enjoy going there, it's a little bit different? And if so, why and where are they?
Yeah, so I mean, I get asked that question a lot, and actually sometimes the answer will surprise a lot of people. So I because I'm covering a lot of Europe and India, one of the regions I go to a lot is India, and it's a fantastic place to visit, both from a cultural aspect and also working with the various teams there. So I'm always amazed when I visit how the whole country and the semiconductor industry is evolving so quickly over there. So we do a lot of events there that are always kind of maxed out in terms of attendees. And like I say, a lot of multinational companies now have big design teams in India. So every trip to India is always a completely packed week. But certainly working with the folk over there and the customers over there is just a pleasure. And I will add that I'm also a big fan of Indian food, so that also helps. So
Yes, the way to a DFT expert's to a DFT expert is through his stomach.
absolutely.
Always. With that, hopefully today's conversation has given you a new perspective. We've seen that with the right tools and help with planning, even small teams can build a solid DFT strategy internally. And the payoff? More control, better test coverage, potentially lower costs. If this has sparked some ideas or questions, we'd love to hear from you. They come direct to myself or to Lee. I'd like to remind you, EDA Solutions is here to help you explore what's possible And whether you're just starting out or ready to take the next step, we'll be here to help. You'll find more of these EDA Expert episodes on our website. If you found this one helpful, go ahead, like it, share it, subscribe, etc. To my guest, Lee, thank you very much for preparing for this and take the time today to record this. And to all of you watching, thank you very much. So with that, goodbye from me, and
good night from him. So, and
thank
Pete,
you
it's
very
always
much.
a pleasure. So, yeah, it's good talking to you.